My sister humiliated me in front of everyone after I literally put my life on the line to protect her from abuse. So I cut her off completely. Threw her out of my life without looking back. Fast forward 3 years, and guess who's suddenly on my porch, begging me to take her in? Thing is, growing up, my parents always seemed to favor me over Elizabeth, my little sister. And honestly, that crushed me. I didn't even realize it until I was around 9 years old. It was Christmas. Everything looked perfect. The tree was lit. The gifts were wrapped in shiny paper with cute little tags. But when I got to the very last present, I noticed something odd. Every single one of them had my name on it. So I asked, "Where are Elizabeth's?" That's when they pointed, casually, like it was no big deal, to a big black trash bag sitting in the corner. Elizabeth's eyes started to well up, but she opened it anyway. Inside? Not a toy. Not a book. Just an envelope. And in that envelope was a list of ways she could improve her academic performance. Even at 9, I knew that was messed up. I said, "Mommy, that's not fair. Elizabeth should get a real present too." Before I could finish, she snapped at me. "Shut the F*** up." And just like that, my dad joined in, yelling so loud the walls could have cracked. "You don't get to tell me how to raise my damn kids." When their backs were turned, I went over and hugged Elizabeth tight. That whole morning, we secretly played with my toys together, just the two of us. And from then on, that's kind of how our relationship went. To our parents, Elizabeth could never do anything right. She was always a disappointment. They came down hard on her for the smallest things, oversleeping on a weekend, missing a chore. They never let it slide. My dad had his own twisted way of punishing her. Sometimes he'd make the whole house give her the silent treatment for 2 full days. Other times, she'd be stuck eating nothing but dry toast for an entire week. But I'd sneak her food and talk to her when they weren't looking, little acts of rebellion, I guess. So when Elizabeth turned 15 and started seeing a boy, I didn't breathe a word of it. She trusted me, and I wasn't about to break that bond. Then one night, she knocked on my door sobbing. Shaking, she pulled out one of those home pregnancy tests. Double lines. My brain kicked into overdrive. I told her we could go live with our Aunt Barbara for a while, and that I'd tell Mom and Dad I was the one who was pregnant. I don't think she understood what I was doing, but I didn't care. What mattered was keeping her safe. That night, she slept in my bed, and the next morning I woke my parents up, fake crying and pinching myself to get the tears flowing. "Mom, Dad, I'm pregnant." My dad looked like he was about to explode, fists clenched, eyes locked on my stomach. But he didn't touch me. My mom? Her first words were, "ing told you Elizabeth would be a bad influence." I said, "We'll be out of your hair soon. We're going to stay with Auntie Barbara." And my dad just nodded. "Damn right you are." Back in my room, Elizabeth and I frantically packed what we could and ordered an Uber. During the ride, I noticed faint barcode-like scars on her wrist. My stomach turned, but I didn't say anything. I just let her cry. By the time we got to Aunt Barbara's, Elizabeth couldn't hold it together anymore. So we told her everything. All of it. But instead of freaking out or calling our parents, Aunt Barbara just hugged us. She looked at us and said she already knew our parents were unhinged. She told us it was only a matter of time before we'd come to her for help. I smiled, and right then I knew I'd made the right choice for Elizabeth. In the next 2 weeks, Elizabeth had a successful abortion, and Aunt Barbara, bless her, managed to talk our parents into letting us come back home. But when we returned, something happened that I never saw coming. Elizabeth had become the favorite. The whole hallway wall, once filled with old family photos, was now a gallery of Elizabeth. Pictures I'd never even seen before. At dinner, I was the one eating near-expired leftovers, while Elizabeth got fresh, home-cooked meals served to her like royalty. But I didn't resent her. In fact, it made me happy. All I ever wanted was for Elizabeth to feel loved, to feel like part of a real family, even if I had to take a back seat for her to get that. Then she turned on me. Every time our parents trashed me for being impure or reckless for getting pregnant, Elizabeth would chime in laughing, joking right along with them. I don't know how I'm the younger one, but somehow the more responsible, she'd say with a smug little grin. At first, I brushed it off. Thought maybe she was just trying to protect herself by playing along. But then Thanksgiving rolled around, and she crossed a line I couldn't ignore. The whole family was there, crowded around the table. Elizabeth stood up and tapped her water glass like she was giving a wedding toast. "I just want to thank my parents," she said sweetly, "for raising me right. For helping me grow into someone responsible and smart, because the last thing I'd want is to turn out like Linda over here." And yeah, she pointed right at me. Everyone laughed. She wasn't done. "I mean, seriously, putting your whole life on the line just 'cause you couldn't keep your legs shut," she added, like it was the punchline to a joke. Mom was laughing so hard, she nearly spit champagne out her nose. I opened my mouth to say something, but before I could speak, my dad leaned in and muttered through clenched teeth, "Don't even think about it." So I swallowed my pride, said nothing, and just let it go. When everyone left, they were all patting my parents on the back like they were heroes for raising such a good kid. Like I hadn't been the one who raised her. So I made a decision. I played the long game. A few days later, CPS rang the doorbell. I'd filed an anonymous report, everything our parents had ever done to Elizabeth. Every scar, every insult, every time they made her feel worthless. When they interviewed me, I told them everything. No filter. No holding back. I wasn't sure what would happen. Maybe they'd take Elizabeth away, or maybe they'd take me. But they didn't. They said they'd return for a surprise visit, and then left. The second the door shut, I realized my parents had heard the whole thing. What happened next still haunts me. My dad's face turned a shade of red I didn't think skin could manage. His eyes were bugging out of his skull, and his fists were clenched so tightly his knuckles went ghost white. My mom didn't say a word. She just stood there like a statue, her face completely blank, the kind of blank that always meant something bad was coming. I backed up until I hit the wall, my heart thudding so hard it felt like it was stuck in my throat. Then, finally, my dad spoke, calm as could be. And that made it even more terrifying. "You ungrateful little," he said, like he was commenting on the weather. "After all we've done for you?" I wanted to laugh, honestly. Done for me? Like what? Spoiling me with gifts while treating my sister like trash. Turning me into their golden child while making Elizabeth suffer? But I knew better than to say any of that. I kept my mouth shut. "I didn't lie," I said instead, my voice trembling even though I tried to keep it steady. Everything I said was true. That's when my mom finally started moving, slowly walking toward me, each step more deliberate than the last. "You've always been such a disappointment," she said coldly. Which was rich, considering she used to tell me I was the only thing she'd ever done right. "We gave you everything," she went on, "and this is how you thank us?" I glanced toward the staircase, trying to figure out if I could make a run for it, but my dad was already standing there, arms crossed, completely blocking the way. Elizabeth was nowhere in sight. Probably holed up in her room. And I didn't blame her. "Go to your room," my dad said flatly. "We'll deal with you later." I didn't wait for a second invitation. I bolted upstairs and slammed my bedroom door shut, locking it even though I knew that wouldn't stop them if they really wanted to get in. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type out a text to Aunt Barbara. CPS came. Parents heard everything. "Help." She texted back right away. "Stay calm. Don't provoke them. I'll be there tomorrow." But tomorrow felt like a lifetime. I sat on my bed for what felt like hours, listening to the muffled sound of my parents arguing downstairs. I couldn't make out the words, they kept dipping in and out, rising and falling, but the tension was unmistakable. Every now and then I thought I heard my name. Eventually, I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. I held my breath. They didn't stop at my door. They walked right past and headed into Elizabeth's room. I pressed my ear to the thin wall we shared, straining to hear. All your sister's fault, my dad was saying. She's always been jealous of you. I couldn't catch Elizabeth's reply, but whatever she said made them laugh. My stomach twisted. Was she seriously turning on me now? After everything I'd done? I didn't sleep that night. I kept waiting for my bedroom door to swing open, for them to drag me out, and I didn't even know what. But nothing happened. Just silence. That eerie, too quiet kind of silence that always comes before something explodes. The next morning, I waited until I heard them moving around downstairs before leaving my room. I'd been holding in my bladder all night and was pretty sure I was gonna burst. I made it to the bathroom and back without running into anyone. But as soon as I opened my door again, there was Elizabeth, standing right there in the hallway. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she snapped, pushing past me into my room and slamming the door behind her. "Why would you tell CPS all that stuff?" she demanded. I stared at her, completely stunned. "Are you actually serious? After what they did to you?" "They're different now," she said, not looking me in the eye. "They treat me well. You're just mad because you're not the favorite anymore." That hit me like a punch to the gut. "Jealous," I said, my voice tight. "I pretended to be pregnant so you wouldn't have to deal with any of this. I lied to protect you, and now I'm the villain." Her face went hard, but I could see something flicker in her eyes. Fear, maybe? Or guilt. "Yeah, well, I never asked you to do that," she muttered. "Maybe you just wanted to play the hero." Before I could say another word, we both froze. There was a knock downstairs. We heard Mom's voice, fake sweet, the kind she only used when guests were around. And then I heard Aunt Barbara. Relief crashed over me like a wave. "That's Aunt Barbara," I said. "She's here to help." Elizabeth's eyes went wide with panic. "You called her? Are you out of your mind? Dad's gonna kill you." "He won't do anything with her here," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "Come on. Let's go downstairs." But she just shook her head. "I'm not going anywhere with you. You're trying to ruin everything." And just like that, she stormed out of my room, leaving me standing there, stunned. Was she really choosing them over me? I took a deep breath, trying to gather myself, and walked downstairs. My legs felt like jelly the whole way. Aunt Barbara was sitting in the living room with my parents, a coffee cup untouched in front of her. When she saw me, her face lit up with relief, though she stayed composed. "Linda, sweetheart," my mom said, all sugary and fake. "Your aunt just dropped by for a little visit. Isn't that nice?" I nodded. Didn't trust myself to speak. My dad was staring at me with laser focus, his expression warning me to stay in line. I was thinking the girls could come stay with me for a few days, and Barbara said casually, "It's spring break, after all, and I could use the company." "That's very kind of you," my mom said, still smiling that tight, fake smile. "But we've already made some family plans." "Actually," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "I'd really like to go." You could feel the air in the room shift. The temperature dropped, and my dad's jaw clenched so hard I thought it might snap. Before he could say a word, Elizabeth came bouncing down the stairs. "Aunt Barbara," she said brightly, like everything was totally normal. "I didn't know you were coming." Aunt Barbara glanced between the two of us. You could tell she was picking up on the tension. "I was just inviting you girls to stay with me for a bit," she explained. "Oh, that sounds fun," Elizabeth said with a smile, but then she looked over at our parents. "But Mom and Dad already promised to take me shopping this weekend for new clothes." I stared at her. Was she seriously picking shopping over a chance to get away from this hellhole? Then I noticed it, the way she subtly shifted her weight, positioning herself farther away from Dad. Her smile was fake. Her eyes were scared. "Aunt Barbara didn't ask," she said, locking eyes with my dad. "She told you Linda's leaving with me today." I held my breath, standing in the middle of that silent standoff. Dad looked like he was about to blow. His whole face was turning red, and his jaw kept twitching. But something in Aunt Barbara's stare must have made him think twice. "Fine," he growled finally. "Take her. She's always been nothing but trouble anyway." I didn't wait for anyone to change their mind. I ran upstairs, shaking with relief, and started stuffing clothes into a backpack as fast as I could. Then Elizabeth showed up in the doorway again. Her voice was quiet. "You're really going?" I stopped packing. "Come with me," I begged. "Aunt Barbara can keep us both safe." She shook her head, tears in her eyes. "I can't. You don't get it." "Then help me get it," I said, desperate for her to let me in. She peeked over her shoulder, then slipped into my room and quietly shut the door behind her. "Dad said if I don't play along, he'll hurt you," she whispered. "Said he'd make it look like an accident." I felt like my entire body froze. "What?" "That's why I've been saying all those things," she said, wiping her face. "I thought if I pushed you away, you'd stay away. And that'd keep you safe." Another tear slid down her cheek. "But now you've really pissed him off. I don't know what he's going to do." I grabbed her and held her tight, feeling her trembling in my arms. "Then come with me," I whispered. "Please. We'll figure it out." She pulled back, brushing the tears off her face. "I can't. Just go. You have a chance. Take it." My heart was pounding, but I knew she wasn't going to change her mind. I kept packing, but my thoughts were spinning. If what she said was true, then Dad wasn't just angry, he was dangerous. And now I had to find a way to save her, too. Downstairs, Aunt Barbara was waiting by the door with her car keys already in hand. My parents stood nearby. My mom had her arms folded, stone-faced. Dad still looked like he could explode at any second. "We'll see you soon, Linda," my mom said, her voice sweet but sharp. The threat underneath it was impossible to miss. I didn't say a word, just nodded. As Aunt Barbara and I walked to her car, I could feel my dad's eyes drilling into the back of my neck. I didn't let myself breathe until we were driving away, watching the house disappear in the rearview mirror. "You okay?" Aunt Barbara asked gently once we hit the main road. That's when everything I'd been holding in came flooding out. I broke down crying, full on sobbing. Through the tears, I told her everything about Elizabeth, about the pregnancy, the lies, the blame, the way she flipped on me, and what she'd just confessed about Dad. By the time I was done, Aunt Barbara's hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles had turned white. "We have to get Elizabeth out of there," she said firmly. "But how?" "She won't come. She's scared." "I'm calling CPS again," she said. "What you just told me changes everything. This time, they'll have to act." But when we got to her place and she made the call, it didn't go the way we hoped. The CPS worker on the phone said they couldn't remove Elizabeth without direct evidence of abuse, especially since she denied everything during her interview. "So that's it?" I asked, my throat tightening. "We just leave her there?" Aunt Barbara shook her head. "No. We just have to get smarter. We'll find another way." Over the next few days, I stayed with her, constantly on edge. Every time the phone rang, my stomach dropped. I kept trying to text Elizabeth, but she barely responded. "I'm fine. Don't worry. Stay away for your own good." Aunt Barbara went over to my parents' house twice, said she was picking up more of my things, but really she was trying to find a way to talk to Elizabeth alone. No luck. My parents hovered the whole time, never giving her a minute alone. A week went by, then another. I went back to school, taking the bus from Aunt Barbara's house. I saw Elizabeth in the hallway sometimes, but she wouldn't look at me. She'd duck her head and speed off in the other direction. Every time, it felt like someone twisting a knife in my chest. Then, about 3 weeks after I left, Elizabeth didn't show up to school. I texted her. No response. I called the house. No answer. I couldn't breathe. I pushed through the rest of my classes in a daze, completely distracted. That afternoon, instead of going back to Aunt Barbara's, I took the bus to my old neighborhood. I had to make sure she was okay. When I got there, my dad's car wasn't in the driveway. But my mom's was. That was weird. She never stayed home alone. I hesitated on the front porch, then decided to go around to the back. I still had my old house key. I slipped in through the kitchen door as quietly as I could. The house was dead silent. No voices, no TV. Just stillness. I crept through the kitchen and toward the stairs, heart thudding in my ears. Elizabeth. I called out softly. Mom? No response. I headed upstairs and checked Elizabeth's room first. Her bed was made. The room looked untouched. My old room was the same, like a time capsule. Nothing out of place. Finally, I reached my parents' bedroom. The door was closed. I hesitated, hand on the knob, then turned it slowly and pushed the door open. My mom was lying on the bed, flat on her back, staring at the ceiling. An empty bottle of pills was sitting on the nightstand. For a second, I thought she was dead. But then she blinked, slowly turned her head toward me. Linda, she mumbled, her voice slurred. What are you doing here? Where's Elizabeth? I asked sharply, panic tightening around my ribs. Gone, she whispered. With your father. Said they needed some time alone. My blood turned to ice. Where? When are they coming back? She gave a lazy shrug. Don't know. Maybe the cabin. Your dad's so angry lately. The cabin. My dad's old hunting cabin way up in the mountains. I hadn't been there since I was a little kid, before Elizabeth was even born. It was isolated. No neighbors for miles. I backed out of the room, pulling out my phone to call Aunt Barbara. No signal. Of course. That bedroom had always been a dead zone. I raced downstairs and grabbed the house phone, but the cord had been yanked right out of the wall. Panic clawed up my throat as I bolted out of the house, sprinting down the street until my phone finally picked up a signal. I didn't waste a second. I dialed Aunt Barbara, barely able to get the words out. Slow down, she said. Wait, are you at your parents' house right now? Is Elizabeth there? No, I gasped. She's with Dad at the cabin. Mom's here, but she's out of it. I think she took something. And I think he's gonna hurt Elizabeth. There was a pause. Then Aunt Barbara's voice came back sharp and steady. I'm calling the police. Don't move. I'm coming to get you. There's no time, I said, already turning back toward the house. The cabin's 2 hours away. I'm taking Mom's car. Linda, no, listen to me. You don't even have a license. But I'd already made up my mind. I ended the call, ran back inside, grabbed Mom's purse off the counter, and dug out the car keys. I'd driven a few times before, once with Aunt Barbara, and a couple times when Dad let me steer in empty parking lots. I could do this. The drive felt like the longest 2 hours of my life. I was gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands were numb. I stuck right at the speed limit, scared to death of getting pulled over. My phone kept buzzing, probably Aunt Barbara, but I didn't dare take my eyes off the road. By the time I turned off onto the narrow dirt path leading to the cabin, the sun had dipped low. Twilight was closing in. I killed the headlights and parked down the road a bit, not wanting to draw attention. Dad's truck was parked right out front. My stomach dropped. I crept through the trees, sticking to the shadows. The cabin windows were glowing with light, and I could hear my dad's voice inside, though I couldn't make out the words. I circled around the back where I remembered a small bathroom window. Standing on my toes, I peeked inside. The place was just like I remembered, one big open room with a tiny bathroom off to the side. Dad was pacing, waving his arms, talking fast. Elizabeth was curled up on the couch, knees to her chest, trying to make herself as small as possible. She wasn't hurt, not yet, but she looked terrified. Your sister ruined everything, I heard him say, his voice low but harsh. CPS is sniffing around now. Do you have any idea what that means? Elizabeth shook her head, silent. It means we've got to be careful now. No more slip-ups. No more evidence. My stomach turned. What was he planning? Whatever it was, I couldn't let it happen. I backed away from the window and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking. There were a dozen missed calls and one text from Aunt Barbara. Police on their way to cabin. ETA 30 minutes. Stay away. 30 minutes? That felt like forever. What if he heard Elizabeth before they got here? I crept around to the front of the cabin, trying to figure out my next move. The door would be locked, but I remembered the fake rock by the porch steps. There was always a spare key in it. I was so focused on feeling around for that rock that I didn't hear the door open behind me. My dad stepped out, lighting a cigarette. I froze in place, just a few feet away, crouched low beside the porch. He took a long drag, then called back inside. "I'm gonna check the truck. Don't move." As he walked past me toward the vehicle, I pressed myself flat against the side of the cabin, barely breathing. He didn't see me. Now or never. I ran up the steps and slipped through the door he'd left half open. Elizabeth's eyes went wide. "Linda? What are you?" "Shoo," I said, grabbing her arm. "We have to go. Right now." She hesitated for only a second before getting up. We headed straight for the back door. But just as we reached it, we heard heavy footsteps on the porch. "Hide," Elizabeth whispered, shoving me toward the bathroom. I ducked inside and gently eased the door almost shut, leaving just a crack to see through. My dad came stomping back in, a coil of rope in his hands. "Where do you think you're going?" he asked Elizabeth, his voice all smooth and dangerous. "Nowhere," she said quickly. "I just needed to stretch my legs." He stared her down for a long moment, then finally gave a slow nod. "Sit down. We need to talk about what happens next." Elizabeth sat, her eyes flicking briefly toward the bathroom. My heart was pounding in my chest like a drum. She was doing everything she could to keep me hidden. Dad dropped the rope on the coffee table and sat across from her. "You know I love you, right?" he said in that fake soft tone he used when he wanted to manipulate. "Everything I've done has been to make you stronger." She nodded automatically, her expression blank. I knew that look. She'd worn it for years, a mask, a way to protect herself. "But your sister doesn't get it," he went on. "She thinks I'm the enemy. She's turned everyone against us." Elizabeth stayed quiet, then asked softly, "What are we going to do?" He leaned forward and took her hands in his. My skin crawled just watching it. "We're going to start fresh. Just the two of us. Somewhere far away. Somewhere no one knows us." My blood ran cold. He was planning to disappear with her. Cut her off from the world. I had to stop him. I looked around the bathroom, desperate for something I could use. Anything. But it was just towels, shampoo bottles, toilet paper. Then I saw it, just through the crack in the door, near the fireplace. Dad's hunting rifle, propped up in the corner like it was waiting for me. I'd never held a gun in my life. I didn't even know if it was loaded. But maybe just holding it would be enough. Maybe I could bluff my way through. And then I heard it. Sirens. They were still distant, but getting closer. Dad heard them too. His head whipped toward the window. "What the hell?" he muttered, getting up fast and crossing the room. "Did you call someone?" my dad barked, turning toward Elizabeth. "No," she said quickly, her voice shaking with real fear. "I swear I didn't." He stared at her for a moment, squinting like he was trying to read her mind. Then his gaze shifted toward the bathroom door. "Someone else is here, isn't there?" Before Elizabeth could say anything, he stormed over and yanked the door open. There he was, towering over me, his face twisted with rage. "You," he growled, grabbing my arm and hauling me out like I was some kind of criminal. "I should have known you couldn't keep your nose out of it." "Dad, stop," Elizabeth shouted, jumping up from the couch. "Don't hurt her." The sirens were close now. No mistaking it, they were almost here. But he didn't care. His grip on my arm tightened until I winced in pain. "You called the cops," he hissed, his voice low and full of venom. "After everything I've done for you?" I looked him in the eye. "You've never done a damn thing for me," I said, my voice finally steady. "All you've ever done is hurt Elizabeth and made me sit back and watch it happen." His face contorted like he'd been slapped. For a split second, I thought he was going to hit me. His arm twitched, his eyes narrowed. But then Elizabeth stepped between us. "It's over, Dad," she said. And her voice, God, It was stronger than I'd ever heard it. "I'm not going anywhere with you." The look he gave her was the kind of thing that sticks with you. Pure, boiling fury. He shoved her out of the way, hard. She hit the table and stumbled, but didn't fall. He raised his hand. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing myself for the hit. But it never came. There was a loud crash. When I opened my eyes, he was on the ground, groaning, dazed, and Elizabeth was standing over him, gripping the shattered base of a lamp in both hands, breathing like she'd just run a marathon. "Come on," she said, grabbing my hand. "We have to go." We didn't look back. We burst out the front door just as police cruisers came skidding into the clearing, lights flashing like fireworks. And Barbara's car was right behind them. She jumped out the second we came into view, running toward us with her arms wide open. "Are you okay? Are either of you hurt?" she asked, pulling us into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. We just shook our heads, still stunned. Over her shoulder, I watched the officers cuff my dad and lead him outside. His face was bloodied where Elizabeth had hit him. He locked eyes with us. Cold. Furious. But I didn't flinch. Not this time. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of him. With Elizabeth beside me and Aunt Barbara holding onto us like she was never letting go, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safe. The days that followed were a total blur. Cops took our statements right there at the cabin, one question after another. I didn't let go of Elizabeth's hand the whole time. She held on just as tight. Aunt Barbara stayed close too, stepping in whenever we started getting overwhelmed. She handled the tough questions, kept us grounded when the emotion got to be too much. I kept waiting to feel relief, or joy, or something. But mostly, I just felt numb. Like my brain couldn't wrap itself around the fact that it was finally over. That he was really gone. They took him straight to jail that night. The officers said he was facing charges, child endangerment, criminal threats, and a few other things I barely remember now. One of them mentioned that he was considered a flight risk, since he'd planned to take Elizabeth and vanish. When we got back to Aunt Barbara's house, it was past 3 a.m. Elizabeth, and I couldn't sleep. We just sat on the couch, wrapped in blankets, sipping hot chocolate while Aunt Barbara paced the kitchen making 1,000 phone calls. At one point, Elizabeth turned to me with wide, teary eyes and whispered, "I can't believe you came for me." Like it was some kind of miracle. Like she honestly thought I might not. "I'd never leave you," I said. "Not ever." The next morning, a social worker named Marissa showed up. She had kind eyes and spoke softly, like we were made of glass. She offered us snacks every few minutes and explained that we wouldn't be going back to our parents' house. Thank God. Elizabeth picked at a thread on her sleeve. "What about our mom?" she asked. Marissa looked careful with her answer. "Your mother's in the hospital right now. She took some pills, but she's going to be okay. Physically, at least." I didn't know what to feel about that. I was angry at her for never protecting us, for siding with him, for staying silent. But I also remembered how scared she looked whenever Dad raised his voice. How she'd flinch like a reflex. "Can Aunt Barbara be our guardian?" I asked. No way was I letting some stranger take us. No foster homes. No new families. "That's the goal," Marisa said, smiling a little. "She's already started the paperwork." The next few weeks were strange. We stayed at Aunt Barbara's while the legal stuff got sorted out. We had to go back to the police station a few times. We met with the prosecutor, a woman who kept calling us brave and promising my dad would be held accountable. Mom got out of the hospital about a week later. She called Aunt Barbara's house a bunch of times, but I refused to talk to her. Elizabeth did, though. She'd take the phone into the guest room, close the door behind her. I could hear the muffled sound of her voice, sometimes rising, sometimes soft. She never told me what they talked about. I never asked. School was rough. Everybody knew something had happened, they just didn't know what. Rumors were everywhere. Some said our dad tried to kill us. Others claimed we made it all up for attention. A couple of girls I used to hang out with started avoiding me, like the drama might rub off on them. But then there were the surprises. People I barely knew suddenly started being kind. This girl Tanya, who I'd maybe talked to twice in my life, started saving me a seat at lunch. The school counselor, Mr. Reeves, gave me a special pass to skip class when I needed space. My English teacher stopped calling on me unless I raised my hand. Little things. Quiet things. But they made a difference. It was just after gym class when I found Elizabeth in the bathroom, sitting on the floor with her back against the wall, her face buried in her hands. "Hey," I said softly. She didn't look up, but I could hear her sniffling. Some girls had been whispering about her in the locker room, saying she'd faked everything for attention, that she was making it all up for sympathy. I sat beside her and handed her a wad of paper towels. "They don't know anything, Elizabeth. Not one damn thing. They didn't live through it." She gave me a watery smile, wiped her eyes. "Yeah, I know. It just sucks." "Yeah," I nodded. "It really does." Meanwhile, the legal process dragged out like a bad dream that wouldn't end. My dad kept swapping out lawyers like he was auditioning them for a play, each one trying and failing to get the charges dropped. My mom, for once, made a halfway decent decision. She hired her own attorney and filed for divorce. Aunt Barbara was officially granted temporary guardianship over both of us, and after a few tense months, it became permanent. Mom signed her rights away like it was just another form she didn't want to deal with. Then came the dinner where everything changed. Aunt Barbara's phone rang right as we were passing around the salad. She stepped into the kitchen to take the call, but her voice carried. 10 years, she said, her voice sharp. "That's it? You're telling me that's all he gets?" When she came back to the table, she was trying to wear a neutral expression, but her eyes were tight. "What happened?" I asked. She exhaled slowly. "He's taking a plea deal. 10 years in prison, maybe less with good behavior. 7 if he's lucky." Elizabeth sat frozen. 7 years, she whispered. "That's all? After everything?" "I know it's not enough," Aunt Barbara said gently. "But the DA says this way, you two won't have to testify. He pleads guilty, he gets a record, and he's legally banned from being around kids for the rest of his life." I didn't know what to think. I wanted to scream. I also wanted it to be over. Aunt Barbara added, carefully, "Your mom's agreed to supervised visits, but only if you want that." Elizabeth looked over at me, like she was waiting for a cue. "You can see her if you need to," I said. "But I'm not there yet." Living with Aunt Barbara was like learning a whole new way to exist. Her rules weren't random or cruel. You did your homework, then you could watch TV. You let her know where you were going. That was it. She never raised her voice. Never threw anything. Never said we were worthless or lazy or stupid. Instead, she praised our effort. She taped our art to the fridge like it mattered. She asked how our day went and actually listened when we answered. When I got a B on a test, I freaked. My old instincts kicked in. I thought she'd get mad, maybe even threaten to send me back. Instead, she sat me down and said, "Want to go over the material together? Or would you rather I find a tutor?" No drama. No guilt trip. Just support. Elizabeth started seeing Dr. Chin, this quiet, kind therapist who wore wool cardigans and always had lemon drops in her office. After a few weeks, I gave it a shot too. Talking to her felt weird at first, like picking at a scab. But she never pushed too hard, never made me feel broken. About 6 months in, Elizabeth walked into my room and flopped down on my bed, staring at the ceiling like it had answers. "I saw Mom today." I looked up from my laptop. "Yeah?" She cried. Said she was sorry. "What do you think?" I asked. She shrugged. "She seems different without Dad around. Softer, less scared. I don't know if that makes her better, though." "I get that," I said. "I'm not sure I'll ever want to see her. But I'm glad you can." She was quiet a while, then said, "You know what's messed up? I used to lie awake at night wishing I could be you." I blinked. "Wait, what?" When they gave you everything and treated me like I didn't matter, she said. I thought you had it made. I dropped my pencil. Elizabeth, I hated it. I felt like I was part of the problem. Like just being treated better made me responsible for all the ways they hurt you. She turned her head toward me. It wasn't your fault. You were the only light in that house. My throat tightened. You were the reason I stayed as long as I did. I couldn't leave you behind. She reached over and squeezed my hand. Thank you, she said. We didn't say anything else. Some things don't need more words. A year after we moved in with Aunt Barbara, we changed our last name to hers. Elizabeth suggested it, and I agreed instantly. I didn't want to carry our father's name for one more day. When the papers came in the mail, Aunt Barbara took us out for ice cream and made us take goofy photos with our new IDs. It felt like shedding a skin I didn't even realize I was still wearing. That night, though, I had a nightmare. In the dream, my dad was standing in my bedroom, just watching me. I woke up in a panic, heart racing, sweat on my back. I didn't even think. I got out of bed and padded down the hallway to Elizabeth's room. She was already awake, sitting up with her reading light on. Bad dream, she asked, scooting over without waiting for an answer. I nodded and crawled in beside her. You too. She nodded. Dr. Chin says they'll probably never go away completely, but they'll come less often. Comforting, I muttered. She gave a dry laugh. Yeah, but at least we've got each other. And she was right. That was the difference now. We weren't going through this alone. Last week, I graduated high school. Aunt Barbara threw this party in the backyard with balloons and chips and music. A bunch of my friends came. Even Mom showed up, standing off to the side with a nervous smile. We're not close. Probably never will be, but she's been sober almost 2 years now. Has a steady job at the department store. She handed me a gift card and gave me a hug that was half apology, half congratulations. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Elizabeth's heading into her senior year soon. She's already knee-deep in college brochures, talking nonstop about majoring in psychology or maybe social work. Says she wants to help kids like us, ones who grew up too fast and learned the hard way that not all families are safe. Watching her talk about the future like that, it makes my chest ache in the best way. Me? I'm taking a gap year, trying to figure out what comes next. Aunt Barbara keeps reminding me I don't have to have it all figured out yet, that healing isn't a race and that I've got time. A whole life ahead of me. Sometimes I still think about that Christmas when I was 9, the first time the cracks in our family showed themselves clearly. The way I watched Elizabeth open a garbage bag instead of a wrapped gift. How I slipped her my chemistry set when no one was looking. How we sat on the floor that morning, whispering and laughing, mixing tiny plastic test tubes of fizzing color like it was magic. Back then, I had no idea what was really waiting for us. No clue how dark things would get or how much strength we'd end up finding in each other. And somehow we made it. Just yesterday, Elizabeth and I were out in the backyard with Aunt Barbara, helping her plant flowers. The sun was blazing, our hands were caked in dirt, and we were all sweating through our shirts. Elizabeth was telling this ridiculous story about her friend Susan's train wreck Tinder date, and Aunt Barbara laughed so hard she snorted. Which, of course, made us laugh even harder. I remember stopping for a second, just standing there in the garden, the sun on my face. I looked at them, Elizabeth and Aunt Barbara, kneeling in the flower beds, teasing each other and wiping soil on their pants. And it hit me. This is what safety feels like. This is what love looks like. No fear. No walking on eggshells. Just joy and dirt and laughter that makes your sides hurt. And I thought to myself, as clear as anything, we made it.